this Yoga Sutras, I decided to talk about suffering because I think it's pretty appropriate, right? At our time, it's always appropriate, but right now it feels even more appropriate because it's a lot of things are going on in the world, and I think a lot of people are suffering. So that's why I decided on that topic about suffering. So at the top of your handout, you guys managed to get the handouts then? Everybody has them now? Just do thumbs up. Yeah, okay. So why do we practice yoga? And I was also thinking about this because a lot of people show up on their yoga mats, once a week, twice a week, every day, however often they show up. And I think it's really important to know exactly why we are deciding to do yoga practice, whether it's meditation, pranayama, asana, or any kind of asana. It's quite interesting to have the intellectual knowledge. I'm doing this because these are the aims I have. And Patanjali gives us what he thinks are the aims of yoga. At the end of the day, we can decide what the aims are for us, and we don't have to follow exactly what he is saying. But it is interesting to use the Yoga Sutras as a guidance, right? And so one of the reasons that we practice yoga is to avoid future suffering. So that Yoga Sutra is 2.16, and he says to overcome future sufferings. Why do we practice yoga? To overcome future suffering. And it's future suffering because past suffering is done, right? We can't change past suffering, but what we can do is work to avoid future suffering. And if you have any questions or something to add, don't hesitate to bring that in there. And I think when we look at our world, when we think about suffering, it can feel kind of overwhelming, no? I don't know, I feel overwhelmed, right? I have to tell myself, I have to talk to myself, I have to really investigate to let go of that feeling of overwhelm, because I feel so insignificant, right? I'm this little person in Paris full of lots of people. What am I going to do to make any difference? Whether I do protests, whether I don't eat meat, whether I, study this, study that, is that going to make any change in the world? Do you guys feel this sometimes? Yeah. And then how does that make you feel? Just out of curiosity. Helpless. Helpless. Yeah, powerless. Demotivated. Yeah. You feel helpless, and then you feel demotivated, and you feel like, why bother, right? Nothing to do here, right? That's their problem, or that's whatever, and I just have to ignore it and pretend like nothing's going on and nothing to do. But actually, if we look at our own little worlds, and I've seen it in my own life and in my own little world, is actually, I feel like I am contributing to the suffering, right? Because of the way I might be behaving with somebody else, whether it's a friend, a colleague, a family member, and I start to see those, or somebody on the street, or a store clerk, or somebody on the metro. I see all those ways that I'm contributing to suffering. It may not seem like such a big deal because I'm not, I'm not hitting people, or I'm not harassing, or it's nothing that could be a crime, right? And so it doesn't seem like such a big deal because they're just little ways of making other people suffer or making myself suffer. And so what I like to believe, and I do believe, is that what is happening on the world stage is because of what's happening in our micro environments. So how we are behaving with each other in our little community of yogis, how we behave with each other, our family members, our extended family members. This is going to start very small and just go bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And when we live in a big city like Paris, sometimes it can really seem harsh, no? Right? You just walk around ignoring the other people. And I was telling Pierre-Antoine the other day, I was on the metro, and it was a part of the metro where you come out of ground, so you're up high. And I was sitting across from this woman, and she was like trying to get my attention, and she's like pointing out the window to me, and I look, and there's this rainbow outside. And I was just like, I was impressed by the rainbow, but I was more impressed that this woman pointed out to me, this complete stranger. We made eye contact when she came in, you know, I moved so that she could have more space, and, you know, but then this complete stranger just kind of lit up my day. And, you know, and it's amazing how these tiny little minimal acts of kindness can actually, she would have no idea. Like, I have no idea, I would never recognize her if I saw her again. But somehow she managed to make me feel good for the rest of the day, right? Or the other thing that happened when I was coming by train down up to Paris in the south, and I always go on the bottom tram, because the bottom level, because I had a big suitcase with Yoga Sutra books and all these anatomy books and everything, and it's too heavy. So I'm like, okay, I'm an old lady, I'm not gonna climb up the stairs and down the stairs, so I'm going on the easy route. And then, of course, the doors don't work. So I had to get off the train. I had to drag the suitcase up the stairs, across the train, and then down the stairs to the other side. And I couldn't carry the suitcase. I had to go one step at a time. And the guy in front, he saw, and he picks up my suitcase, brought it all the way to the other end of the train, all the way down the stairs and out to the cave for me. And again, I was just like, wow, that's amazing, you know, like, I didn't ask him to do it, and he didn't talk to me. He wasn't like trying to pick me up, or there was no ulterior motives there. He was just being a nice human being. So that's what all of this coming together is why I was thinking about suffering these days, and how we can do something. We can do something, even if it feels insignificant. Every single day, I believe that we should be doing something to reduce the suffering in our world. And then on the other side, so that's, you know, working outwards, but even on the inside, because it's a way of changing our way of thinking. So we could be caught up in, I don't know, like, you know, like the issue. I end up using personal stuff because it makes sense to me. But I'm in Paris. Half my family is in the south. Our nice house is in the south. The nice weather is in the south. The beach is in the south. The doggies are in the south. You know, all this stuff is in the south. And when Gerald and Jonathan left, they were in Paris recently, and the first day they left, that day I was like feeling like down all day long, you know, like sad. And I needed to mourn it, right? I needed to feel that sadness. You don't just cut away the sadness, because this doesn't help either, because it's fake, right? So I was like, okay, I'm sad today. I kind of walk around feeling sad all day. And then the next day, I'm like, okay, that's finished. Now suffering is done. Now I'm in a great city. I have great friends here, lots of really amazing people. I have a yoga studio full of lots of amazing, you know, yoga people. My daughter's still here. My family's here. And so, like, let's focus on the positive stuff and not get dragged down into, oh, I'm stuck in Paris when I don't really want to be. And so some of that is changing the outlook from the inside and really appreciating what you do have, what I do have. I have a healthy body, I have, you know, lots of the different things. And I'm sure all of you can do the same thing, rather than learning to moan and groan and you know, because then that doesn't make you feel good. It doesn't make the others feel good. And again, I think it expands outwardly into the world, into the people around me, into the city around me, into the country around me, into the continent around me, into the world around me. So I really do believe that we can do something. So that was my long intro to convince you that we can do something. Do you have anything to share or ask? Does it make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same. Like sometimes some kindness from a stranger or someone you know, or you can yeah, just brighten your day. Completely agree.
Okay. Oh yeah, and so what I wrote there, so why we suffer and can we do something? So the ancient sages, Patanjali included, why they put these systems together for us was because they recognized that there is suffering. Everything to the discerning mind is what sutras say. To the discerning mind, we see everything as suffering. And if you think about it, when we're born, you know, giving birth isn't very pain-free, and being birthed isn't pain-free. You know, this is a big shocker for us to come from the comfort, you know, to this like atmosphere around us, and you know, to have to breathe in the air and eat our own food and all this. This has some suffering. So the ancient sages recognize that there is suffering, and they wanted to find ways to lessen our suffering, lessen their suffering, lessen our suffering. So what I wrote there is so the ancient sages asked themselves, why do we suffer? Can we do anything about it? Patanjali gives us insight into the core reasons for our suffering and the yogic tools to apply in order to lessen our pain. So that's really, if you wanted to sum up the Yoga Sutras, this is the sum. Why do I want to apply any of the Yoga Sutras? Because I want to lessen suffering in myself and in the others. It is inevitable in life that there will be pain and sorrow. However, with yoga, one can lessen causes and avoid future suffering. So the premises behind that: one, life is full of suffering. Two, suffering can be overcome. Sometimes when you hear, oh, life is suffering, it sounds really negative, but it's actually, it's realistic, because that's the reality. We are all going to die. Everybody we love is going to die. The building is going to wither and fall apart. Plants live, plants die. Animals live, animals die. So there is always this little light edge of fear and not wanting to let go, right, of what we have, our body or other things. So it sounds pessimistic, however, actually it's more realistic, and you could even say it's optimistic, because it's showing us that there are ways to overcome this. Not easy, but there are ways. So in Buddhism, it's very similar, and I found this lovely quote. I thought this was amazing. So it's, I found it where the Dalai Lama was visiting in Christchurch in New Zealand after those killings. and he was talking about this. So the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths: suffering, the cause of suffering, cessation, so cessation of suffering, and the path to lead us out of suffering, the Eightfold Path. The Dalai Lama clarified that the ignorance, and so if you know the sutras a little bit, this is like here, this could have been written from the Yoga Sutras, right? The Dalai Lama clarified that the ignorance that is at the root of suffering refers to the contradiction between appearance and reality. Appearance, nature, prakriti, everything I can see; reality, the one self, the true reality, the soul, purusha, right? The appearance that things exist independently is unreal. So we are all interconnected. There is something that joins us all, but gives rise to the disturbing emotions in our minds. Any action motivated by ignorance is a source of suffering, while actions motivated by wisdom are a source for overcoming suffering. Wisdom is to understand reality, while ignorance is to misconceive it. Okay, and as you see what I've written, it'll all kind of refer back to this. So the sutras ask us to do practices that bring about contemplation, reflection, insights, understandings. So this is the wisdom part, right? Think about samadhi. Samadhi, there's a ladder of samadhi. There's different ways to go in. There's different types of samadhi. And those different types of samadhis give us insights, give us knowledge. We learn from those. So this is, the more wisdom we have, the more understanding we have, then we understand what the reality is. The reality is more than what we can see, and there is that oneness behind what we can see. And so it's getting to the wisdom to know this, basically, putting it in my own words. Make sense so far? Yeah? Okay. So basically, we use self-inspection. So through our life, through yoga, we're using yoga tools for self-inspection. If I'm going to do yoga asana on the mat, it isn't only to get in good shape, to move around our energy. You know, those are all benefits for sure, because we want to have a good, healthy body. When we have a body that doesn't disturb us, right? My knees hurt, it disturbs me, and then it brings my mind to my knees. If I have some sort of health problem, then it brings my mind to that health problem. So if we do yoga asana, it's very helpful. But also we can use our yoga asana to understand ourselves, right? Why am I avoiding yoga asana? Why do I over effort in yoga asana? Why does it disturb me that I cannot do this pose? Why do I feel so prideful when I can do this pose? Right? All those self-inspections help us understand. So you use your yoga asana to gain insights into the low self at the beginning, right? Who am I? Why do I behave like this? What are those thoughts going through my mind? How do I judge myself? How do I judge others? You know, all those likes and dislikes, all these kinds of things. So self-inspection, we use self-inspection to recognize our trapped patterns of behavior that cause suffering to ourselves and others. So I put key terms, samadhi and avidya, right? Avidya is ignorance, right? Samadhi clears away avidya, right? Clears away ignorance. So, and I like this trapped patterns of behavior because we are stuck in our behavior, right? There are patterns that we have. We have our karma, you know, our actions, and then our actions change into, they get more and more deep. The samskaras go deeper and deeper and deeper, and they become deeper patterns, and to the point where they become vasanas and they become our character. Right? Okay, so next, cause of our suffering. So Sutra 217. So why do we suffer? And there's lots of sutras that talk to this, but today I decided to talk about these ones. So the cause of our suffering is the correlation between the seer, which is Purusha, and seen, which is Prakriti, is the cause of that which is to be overcome. So we are to overcome this correlation, this misunderstanding between the Purusha and the Prakriti. Okay, so this here is the soul, the Purusha, the ultimate reality. You know, you can, it's very gray area. Ultimate reality, I'm taking it a little bit further, but the Purusha, our soul. And part of our soul is connected with each other's soul and is connected to the Ishvara, right? The ultimate reality, right? Okay, so we have a little drop of the ultimate reality within us, which is dropped into all of us, all living beings, actually, all beings even, like there is, it's in the rocks and the dirt and, you know, the atmosphere. So this is dropped into all of us. So we actually have this connection, like this thread between all of us. But because we don't understand, we think that it's divided, right? So it's correlated. And the reason why he says it like this is because I walk around thinking I am the center of my universe, right? I am the universe. And I think that the ultimate reality is me, right? Egoism. I am, wow, Linda, right? I am yoga teacher. I am female. I am mother. I am wife, whatever our labels we add to ourselves. And so we need to understand that we have a part of this and that this is connected, but actually everything that we see on the outside is not the reality. Because reality, we have to redefine reality. What is reality? Reality is that which is never going to die. That which has never been born. Okay, so just if you're getting confused by, but I can see Elodie sitting there, she's real, I can touch the floor, this is real, I can touch my body, I feel that this is real. It's because the ultimate reality, the soul, never is born and it never dies. That makes some sense? So far, so good? Not throwing anybody off there? Okay. We have difficulty seeing ourselves and others beyond the body, the mind, the personality. It's difficult to comprehend that there is a divine part to every being. This is due to the kleshas, and particularly avidya, the ignorance. So we need to learn to be able to see that there is a divine in every single being. And this will help reduce the suffering because we are so divisive. I don't know, it feels to me like more than ever, you know, since social media and a lot of things that have happened in the world. But I'm not sure if it's just like, sometimes I listen to talks from Ram Dass. I listen almost every day to talks of by Ram Dass. And his talks in the 70s, 80s, 90s, I think you could listen to it today and think that he said that yesterday. So I don't know if it's just that I've opened up my awareness more and I see all this divisiveness, or it's just that it's always been there and I just never was aware of it. I think it's probably always been there, but it gets more amplified because we see everything on social media now. That's my guess. But it's hard to see that there is a divine in some people, right? And we have to train ourselves. I don't know, I feel like it's training. Really, it's training to be able to look and see that even if there's lots of layers of stuff going on, like whirls of, you know, behavior that isn't very pleasing, but within all that, there is divine in there. And we need to really, I think it's super important to be able to look and see that in the most horrendous criminals we can think of, right? It sounds really extreme, but it does bring some peace somehow inside to be able to do that. And when we have disagreements with people, right? It's sometimes hard to feel it at the moment, right? We get into disagreements usually with the people we care about the most, actually, right? And then we have to sit back and, you know, I don't want to add guilt, is why I'm saying this. It's very normal. We're human beings and we will do things that are going to harm others. And we don't add the guilt to that. That is normal, but our job is then to reflect upon it and probably try to understand it and try to forgive and accept ourselves and the other. Okay, so the next one, so we're talking about avidya, the kleshas. What are the kleshas and what is avidya? So Sutra 2.3. So the 5 causes of affliction are spiritual ignorance. Yeah, I put the in brackets there. I amness, ego or asmita, attraction, raga, aversion, dvesha, and clinging to life or fear of death, abhinivesha. So what are the causes of afflictions? So causes of afflictions, you could also say causes of pain, causes of sorrow, causes of suffering. What makes us suffer at the core? Okay, so I like this by Swami Satyananda Saraswati. Klesha is a kind of agony which is inside our very being. Everyone feels subconscious pain, but our superficial daily activities do not allow us to be aware of it. Otherwise, we would see pain in all its vividness. Right? We cover it up because I'm going to go and scroll on Instagram for a while. I'm going to go out with friends and have a good time. I'm going to eat the foods that I like. And we find all these ways to avoid the reality of the vividness of everything is suffering. And I'm not saying I'm not qualifying things. I'm not saying good or bad, because of course, it's important to see our friends. It's important to be with our family and do things that make us feel good. But at the same time, recognizing that suffering in all its vividness. This is the discerning mind. And then sometimes in society, we use ways that actually cause more suffering. Right? Maybe I eat a bunch of junk food, maybe I drink alcohol or use drugs or, abuse others, cause harm to others, swear at people, hit people, do crimes. All those are because of suffering. Because honestly, if we didn't have any suffering, we wouldn't be able to cause suffering. Does that make sense? Can you hear that? Right? If I'm completely at peace, there's absolutely no way I would ever be able to cause suffering to another being. The only time that I cause suffering is because I'm not 100% at peace. Okay? So suffering comes from the inside. It is a response that we produce. Things may happen to us, but we can choose how we react. Too often we add to the suffering by pitying ourselves, being angry, and whatnot. Lots of different things. That makes sense so far? Yeah? Okay, so how to avoid future suffering. So as I said, insights and understandings through samadhi and lessening the causes of afflictions, of which ignorance is the root cause. Okay, so the next sutra kind of explains that, but not as easy to understand, in my opinion, so I translated it by myself. Okay, so Kriya Yoga has the purpose, so Sutra 2.2, has the purpose of cultivating ecstasy and the purpose of thinning out the causes of affliction. Okay, so let's go down to avidya, ignorance. So ignorance or lack of awareness, right? So we don't have awareness. I don't know. I think it's very hard to have like real awareness. This is the base of all affliction. As it is said, it is because we don't truly know the self that we get tangled in the ego. So I don't identify myself as the divine because as the reality, as the soul, because I think of myself as an ego, as Nita. I think of myself as this body. I think of myself as my gender, as my sexuality, as the color of my skin, as my nationality, you know, as even to the point of, I think of myself as being somebody who is happy or who is not happy or who has this disease or doesn't have a disease, who drinks coffee, who doesn't drink coffee, right? All those are, in a way, the way we identify ourselves. We love to do that, right? We love to share our opinions. And I don't know, it seems to be more and more we share our opinions. And we identify with our opinions. And so much so that those who don't have the same opinion or don't have the same beliefs or don't have the same nationality or hair color or skin color or gender, those are opposite. And then we get into our little groups and we belong together, right? Which creates all this divisiveness. So that's all has to do with ego as mita, which then attaches itself to the pleasures, raga. What do I like? I like people that like yoga, right? I like people who are trying to be or are vegetarian and trying to be good for the planet, who like to be calm and like to have philosophical discussions, right? All those kinds of things. Those are the people that I'm attracted to. And then I like to eat certain foods. I like to whatever, all our likes, right? And sometimes our likes aren't actually good for us, right? They rest on pleasures, right? I think that if I eat that box of Indian candy, those sweets you brought, I could be eating a whole box easily. And as you're eating them, you think that this is great because, oh, it's so pleasurable. But one is good, more than that, not pleasurable anymore, right? Feels good at the time, but then after it feels really bad, right? And we all do this kind of thing. Going out and partying with friends. Oh, that feels great. That feels great. Oh, but oh, now tomorrow morning I have to get up and I have to go to work and no longer pleasurable, right? So the ego attaches itself to pleasures and then it revolts against dislikes, dvesha. I don't like people who blah, 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 blah. right? I don't like people who eat meat. I don't like people who do drugs. I don't like people who come from that country. I don't like people who don't do yoga or, whatever. I don't like people who ride motorbikes on the sidewalk. That's one of mine. Right? These different kinds of things. So then we get all tangled up our ego. And sometimes our dislikes could be, we think that it's going to give us harm, but actually sometimes our dislikes actually give us good things. Maybe getting up early to go to practice. I don't really feel like doing it. It's hard to get out of bed, but I don't know. Has anybody ever done a yoga practice and thought that was the worst thing they could have ever done for themselves? Right? It's really, maybe if you push yourself and you're really violent with yourself on the mat, you could justify that. But most of the time, you feel pretty good after, right? Right? Most of the time. And then last, and clings to the life in the physical body of Abhinivesha. So I cling to this body. I don't want my body to go away. I don't even, especially don't want the body of those that I love the most to go away, right? That even sounds more painful than losing your own body, right? Because we're clinging to those bodies. We have this fear of death, not realizing that even when my body goes, there'll be an essence of me remaining. Whether the essence is in the mind of others, in the heart of others, in the memories of others, in the DNA of others, that gets going to circulate down generations. So because of this, then I suffer dukkha, right? And I didn't say this, but dukkha, suffering sounds really extreme, right? We could say, oh, well, I don't really suffer, right? But I do have some pain sometimes, but yeah, but I don't even really have pain that often. But what about unsatisfactoriness, right? That could be also another way of looking at dukkha. I'm just not satisfied. I wish those windows were cleaner. I'm just so unsatisfied with those windows. Oh, I wish we could do a new paint job in the yoga studio. I wish I could have a new floor, right? And feeling unsatisfied, And if I look around the world, I would easily be able to be unsatisfied with everything. Oh, looking in the mirror, I wish I was a little younger. Oh, I wish I had a different nose than that. Oh, my body, I really wish that I was like this or like that, right? So, oh, I wish that my partner was like this. Oh, I wish I had more friends, right? So easy to be unsatisfied with things. So, Sutra 2.4. Spiritual ignorance is the field of the others. So either the other causes of affliction, which may be dormant, thinned out, intercepted, or active. Okay, so sometimes our kleshas, they might be dormant, right? I'm not experiencing dvesha right now because I'm in an environment that feels good, so I don't feel like I dislike anything. Maybe they're thinned out because I've been working my yoga and I've managed to make them a little thinner. They're not just like flaming high. They might be intercepted, right? Right now, I'm not, I don't feel raga because I feel so much dislike, so it's intercepting that. Or it might be fully active, right? I'm so scared of dying right now because I don't know, like I'm out in the dark, right? I'm scared. And so all these different ways. So what are those kleshas? So we saw that spiritual ignorance is the field of the others. So it's the root cause of the other. So Ignorance is seeing the eternal, the pure, the joyous, the self, the soul, the big self, the Atman, in the impermanent, the impure, the painful, and the non-self. Because I kind of already talked about that. Does that make sense? Does anybody have questions or confusion or something to add?
What is the difference between Ashrita, the ego, and Ahankara, the ego? Because they both are egos.
You probably know better than me. But what I've learned, make me intimidated, but what I've learned is that the ahankara, right? Is that you asked about the ahankara? The ahankara is like the drop that comes from the purusha, that first drop. So it's almost like the pure ego, right? So it's the pure essence of our being. And I think in the West, at least, we always think of ego as something bad, right? Oh, it's something, oh, look, oh, my ego is flaring. Well, my ego is flaring right now because I'm sitting in front of people and I'm talking. I have to discuss, right, some knowledge. I have to say my name is Linda, right? The ego is always active when we need our ego in our society. I wouldn't be able to go and socialize with people and say, hi, my name's Linda, I'm a yoga teacher, right? I'm Canadian and French and whatever. So I think that for me, that's my understanding of the difference. The ahankara is this drop, but it's more pure. And then as it drops down and it gets into the birth, right? So now I'm being birthed and I'm in a body and I have all those labels that I spoke about. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so where I did want to avoid this. So 2.6. So I amness, the lower ego, Yasvita, is as it were the unification of the powers of the seer and the seen. So again, it's kind of everything that I've talked about, but I wanted to put the sutras there so that if you want to delve into more studies, you can find the sutra and then look at different commentaries. I think it's interesting to look at different commentaries and see how this person approached it, because really you can approach them in a lot of different ways. Attraction rests on pleasure, aversion rests on suffering, clinging to life flows along under its own inclination and arises even in the wise. So those are all those different kleshas, why we suffer. So another quote here that I am fond of from Swami Pravananda. We are tied to what we hate or fear. So the reason why I put this one in there is because, again, sometimes we think of guilt, right? All this can make us feel guilty. And guilt isn't something that we're looking for. We don't want to do things because we feel guilty. We want to do them because that is coming up from our essence and that feels right. It's in our heart. So that is why in our lives, the same problem, the same danger or difficulty will present itself over and over again in various aspects. As long as we continue to resist or run away from it, instead of examining it and solving it. So instead of feeling guilty or running away, we just recognize it. And there's nothing wrong. I don't know, otherwise there would be really something wrong with me. Nothing wrong with getting angry, feeling jealous, feeling envious, feeling self-conscious, or any of those attributes that we think are bad attributes. and there's nothing wrong with enjoying being with your family members, being with your friends, eating some so-called not super healthy food, eating too much sometimes, sleeping too much sometimes, scrolling social media sometimes too much. There's nothing inherently wrong with all that. It's more about actually seeing it for what it is, being able to examine it and seeing, I'm behaving this way because that person is triggering me for, not because of them, but because that behavior makes me feel inadequate, makes me feel like I should be the same as them, or I feel envious or jealous or whatever, the list can go on and on. So it's more about examining it. I got angry. Wow, interesting, right? Why was I so angry about that? And the more that we can go inside and examine it, then the less, because if we add to that suffering, oh God, I got angry. See, terrible mom or terrible person, terrible yogi. I'm supposed to be a yogi. How can I behave like that? I'm so ashamed of myself. If I do that, then I'm going to block it, right? My mind's going to not want to see it. So I'm going to scroll more. I'm going to eat more. I'm going to party more. I'm going to drink or do those things that don't let me see it. Rather than, oh, okay. And then the more I can examine it, when I see those behaviors in other people, then I can see the spark of divinity in those people. Yeah, they're behaving a little off right now, right? But they still have that spark of divinity. Doesn't mean I need to be near them while they're behaving like that. I can walk away, I can stay away, I can put my boundaries up, but I don't have to look at them with hatred, right? If I look at somebody with hatred, then I'm causing suffering. I'm part of the suffering. Ram Dass says that we can only protest against those that we love or things that we love. We can only really manifest against those which we love. And what that means is first we have to love them, right? Gandhi, right? So we are to be able to look with love first. When we can look with love, then we can have conversations. Then we might be able to change something. If we look with hatred, it's useless, right? When you're in a fight with somebody you love, while you are arguing and hating each other, nothing works. It just balloons and balloons and balloons, just goes bigger. But when you can step away, calm down, remember the divinity, remember why you love that person, then you can come together and you can actually have a conversation, right? Okay, so, and then the spiritual aspirant must not love the things of this world too much, but he must not hate them either. Aversion also causes bondage, right? We cannot be free if we hate. Okay. To one who has no aversion, there is nothing to oppose, but to one who has aversion, opposition comes at every step. Just some nice quotes. I have so much else there, so I'm just going to scan it and see if there's something that I want to talk about. I added there techniques to reduce or avoid suffering, because Patanjali gives a lot of different techniques, and they're within the Kriya Yoga and Ashtanga Yoga, so you can look into that. And then I put at the very beginning of the Yoga Sutras, he says what yoga is. It's to calm the mind, right? So when we can calm the mind, right? Think about that argument. when you can go away and you can calm the mind, then you can figure things out. And so he says that when the stilling of the mind has happened, then there is the appearance of the seer in all its essence, right? Our divinity shows itself. And as we're going out of time, I'm just like, oh, it's too long. So I wrote this here. Through the calming of the mind, we gradually clear the layers of conditioning, opinions, right? Because we hold really strong to our opinions. Clear the opinions, clear the likes, clear the dislikes, the misunderstandings. When this is perfected, we are led to samadhi. Samadhi is absorption. When we have this absorption, we get insights and wisdom, understandings, and even kaivalya. So the top level of samadhi is kaivalya, which is liberation. When we are free, then we are not bound by our likes or dislikes, our asmita. So ultimately, this is Ramdas. Ultimately, I'd rather be free and in love than be right. And he doesn't mean in love the way we use it, like, oh, I'm so in love with that person. No, but I stand in love. I stand in freedom. I stand in love. I'm going to express myself through love. Right? This is what he's saying. And so ultimately, when I can express myself through love, then I don't need to be right. Does that make sense? You guys hear that quote? I love this quote. It's one of my favorite quotes. Time just for one more quote. And then the rest, I guess you're gonna have to read on your own. Satchitananda. So wherever we are, we have to learn to handle things properly. We can't always change environments running here and there. The world is a training place where we learn to use the world without getting attached. Instead of saying to one of discrimination, everything is painful, it becomes to one of discrimination, everything is pleasurable. Because we see the divine. And we see the beauty. We don't understand why there's stuff that's not beautiful, but we can kind of look beyond that and still see the beauty. A person with such an understanding has the magic wand to convert everything into happiness. Pleasure and pain are but the outcome of your approach. The way to begin, though, is with the feeling all is painful. Let me detach myself and let me not become involved in it. I'm not going to be part of that suffering. I'm not going to continue to make suffering. Let me not approach the world with selfish motives. Because a lot of that comes because these are my opinions. These are my beliefs. This is what I want. I don't want what you're giving me. I want something else, right? So don't run from pain. The world will follow. Does that make sense? Is it helpful? We all know this. We all know this intuitively. It's just that sometimes it's good to reflect upon it and remind ourselves of this. So the rest, I think you're going to have to read on your own. Oh, maybe the last one with the heart, the last page. I was trying to figure out how to make this really grounded and how does this affect our daily life. So the difference between freedom, because I think in the yoga world too, we think about freedom as what, right? I get to say whatever I want to say. I get to do whatever I want to do, right? These are my beliefs. So some of the things I wrote there. So freedom, this is a misconception. To do what we want. But is it really true? Can we really do what we want? Right? There's laws, there's morals, there's ethics. We can't really do whatever we want, right? So we don't really have freedom. That's a false sense of freedom. The real freedom has to come in from inside by letting go of what I think should be, right? Being able to, okay, this isn't exactly the situation that I perceived. This isn't exactly the situation I wanted, but how am I going to find the freedom within that situation? Right? I might not be able to change the situation, but I can change my outlook on that situation. To think what we want. Do we even have control of our thoughts? Right? I think, oh yeah, this is what I believe. Like this is me. I believe this. Right? And all my opinions. Social media is full of it now, right? Everybody has, but they do it mostly anonymous. Right? We don't want other people actually seeing this. So we don't even have control of our thoughts, right? Unless you can sit and you can be still and you can have the stillness of the vrittis, we do not have control of our thoughts. Our thoughts have been implanted by culture, by our cultures, by our experiences, by what we read, by our past births, by our karmas, all those things. We think we have freedom to say what we want, but do we really have freedom to say what we want? Will it hurt someone? Do we always have control? I know I say lots of things that after I think, why did I say that? I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't have said that, right? So that shows my ultimately not even having the freedom to be able to stop myself from saying some things. And what about the things that I say that have injured somebody else? Right? Do I have freedom to live where I want? Not really. I think if I really want to live where I want, I'm sorry, that doesn't happen. So I have to find that freedom inside, once again, to accept and feel good where I am. To be whom we want to be. Can I change the color of my skin? No. Can I change my nationality? No. Can I change the society that I was born into, that I live in now? I can't change. I wish I could change the whole, have my mind. Like, I would be a great authoritarian. You can just make everybody vegetarian, everybody kind, no more driving cars, right? We live within our neighborhood and everybody does yoga, everybody does meditation. Yeah, right. Doesn't happen. Okay, so really freedom comes from freedom of our negative reaction, freedom from our negative thoughts, freedom from our negative emotions, freedom from suffering. And this can only happen when we recognize that we are the divine and there is divine in each and every other being everywhere. And we do this through practicing yoga to get to calming the vrittis. As the vrittis calm, then we'll be able to enter into, the 8 limbs of yoga, where I can let go of my senses. My senses aren't attached to the outer world. I can learn to concentrate. I can learn to meditate, and I can learn to absorb into my object of concentration, which will then reveal itself. That's a big sum up. And thank you guys online for being here too.